obviously America was founded in a very multicultural way.
America wasn't founded by grabbing a bunch of dudes from other countries, bringing them here, giving them free apartments and welfare. It was by people who wanted to escape religious persecution, and they started building things, not just coming here getting handouts. I mean, I've been a lot of places and I've seen a lot of people, and as soon as the truth is told and you don't like it, you say racist.
Let's talk about the truth here, Piers. I got to jump in here. When we talk about the founding of America, it was founded by European colonizers, built on the backs of enslaved Africans and on the genocide of indigenous people. To claim that it wasn't, just free handout, it literally was. The Homestead Act, which was finally repealed in 1987, gave hundreds of millions of acres of free land to white European immigrants while denying them to the descendants of enslaved Africans. And so even to this day, the single demographic, the largest demographic on public welfare are white Americans. But there is no accountability and restitution or reparations for the enslaved Africans and their descendants who suffered genocide. And we rewrite this history, well, we built it by our bootstraps. No, you didn't. You built it on the backs of the enslaved Africans.
The biggest government welfare program isn't food stamps, it isn't SNAP, it isn't Medicare, it isn't Medicaid, it isn't even Social Security. It's free land to white people. It was called the Homestead Act. Come, let's do our homework. What were the Homestead Acts? They were a series of acts from the federal government in the United States meant to encourage settlement of the plains areas and the Wild West, because we all know in Colonialism 101, the first step is to acquire land. The second step is to occupy it. So just because you made the Louisiana Purchase and you officially own all of this land, if your people aren't on it, then how is it really yours? This moment in American history is often romanticized in shows like Little House on the Prairie, Godless, Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, and of course in favorite films like Dances with Wolves. Now, there were 4 major Homestead Acts. The first one was the Donation Land Claim Act of 1850. Now, this happened right after the United States got a lot of land from the Mexican-American War. The second one was the Homestead Act of 1862. This was right after the southern states seceded from the Union, and President Lincoln signed this act into law, encouraging people to settle land out west, particularly the Plains states. The Homestead Act of 1862 was responsible for the biggest expansion of settlement in the United States. Then, of course, we had the 40 acres and a mule deal of 1865, which was meant to be reparations, and interestingly enough, this is the only one that did not benefit white people, and it's the only one that was rescinded. Isn't that curious? Then, of course, you have the Southern Homestead Act of 1866, and we'll get into that in a minute. Now, the first one, the Donation Land Claim Act of 1850. It was meant to encourage people from the eastern United States to head west and settle this parcel of land up here called the Oregon Territory. It granted people 320 acres per person. And if you were a couple, it would give you up to 640 acres. It's a huge bit of land. It was offered to white settlers only, specifically. So if you were black or indigenous, you were not involved with this deal at all. And of course, one of the biggest downfalls of this was it encroached on native lands. So even though this territory was officially the United States at this point, nobody was out here. This was just the Wild West. So this was native tribes living their lives. And as white people started moving over from the east out to the west, taking over, encroaching on people that were already living there and didn't care if Spain sold land to the Americas on paper because that was their home. One thing it did allow finally was for women to be landowners, but it was repealed in 1855. Now, in 1862, we have the Homestead Act. This, interestingly enough, was championed by Andrew Johnson when he was in the Senate. Then he came on to be Lincoln's vice president, and it was signed by Lincoln in 1862. It offered you 160 acres of land, free and clear, if you could improve it. So you had to live on the land, farm it, and stay there, improve it for 5 years. This is covered in Little House on the Prairie. That's what they were doing. It encouraged you to move to the plains states, sort of the middle of the country, and set up farms. It was meant to encourage the poor to middle class individual farm. But of course, most people couldn't even afford to get started because you needed gear, you needed a wagon, you needed horses, you needed a plow, you needed all of this stuff to even work the land and build a home. You needed lumber, you needed stuff, you needed support, infrastructure, and capital to get started. And of course, it became a hotbed for fraud. So all these poor people couldn't bother to get started. They just didn't even know how to approach any of this. It's like being dropped into the wilderness. It's like a game of Survivor. Okay, go. Most people couldn't pull it off. So what happened? Miners, mining companies, lumber companies, railroads came in and took advantage of this deal and set up shop. However, it was the greatest expansion of individual land ownership in this country, and it was mostly taken advantage of by white people. 93 million American citizens are considered direct descendants of homesteaders that are still alive today. That's almost 1 out of 3 American citizens are a beneficiary of this generational wealth that came from the practice of homesteading. Then, of course, is the 40 acres and a mule deal of 1865. It was never officially an act from Congress because it was rescinded by Andrew Johnson, the exact same guy that championed the Homestead Act of 1862. Suddenly, when it came to giving land to black people, he killed it. Isn't that interesting? He intended to make it a law, but he was assassinated before he could. And it granted small plots of land on seized Confederate plantations here on the south shore of the eastern seaboard. This is prime real estate. This was a very specific bit of land that was included in the 40 acres and a mule deal. The plots were specifically marked for formerly enslaved people, and it was considered payment or reparations for the service of over 200,000 black soldiers who fought for the Union to defeat the Confederacy. So this was a deal specifically just for black people. White people need not apply. And it was the one that was killed. Finally, we have the Southern Homestead Act of 1866. This came after 40 acres and a mule was killed because we had a major problem in the American South with tenement farmers and sharecroppers. There was deep, deep poverty in the South after the Civil War. Now, this was signed by Johnson sort of in an attempt to replace the 40 acres and a mule, but of course, it included white people. It focused on land in the South here in Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, and a bit of Florida. It was for newly freed men and white people who fought for the Union, no Confederates. It was supposed to help bring people up out of poverty. There were 28,000 claims by white people and only 6,500 claims by newly freed black people. Why? Well, because white Southerners sabotaged the program. They didn't even tell people that it existed. If you're a plantation owner and you've got these newly freed, formerly enslaved people working your land for peanuts, pennies on the dollar, these poor sharecroppers are trapped, are you really going to tell them, hey, there's free land over in Mississippi, why don't you leave me and go start your own farm? No, of course not. They didn't even tell people the programs were happening. They were intimidating people, harassing people, unaliving people, making their lives completely miserable, and sabotage this program for the newly freed sharecroppers that were trapped in this cycle of poverty. It was deliberate. This wasn't even the prime real estate, the good farming land, the beautiful land along the coast. This was swamps and bayous and forests. If you're a poor sharecropper, what do you know about clearing forests and building infrastructure to even get you into some of these places? So the Southern Homestead Act of 1866 was wildly unsuccessful. It disproportionately helped white people and not black people. It was too little too late for reparations, and it was destroyed by racist white Southerners who made it their business to ruin this program and keep black people in the cycle of poverty. So the Homestead Acts contributed to this period in American expansion that we always romanticize, the California Gold Rush and the pioneers and Little House on the Prairie and all that stuff. But honestly, it was a dark moment in American history. It was a huge welfare program that disproportionately helped white people instead of the people who truly needed help. It displaced Native people and was not nearly as glamorous as we're led to believe. The people who did succeed literally made huts out of mud and manure. And the Homestead Act had repercussions for generations. If your family is given 640 acres of prime real estate, that is generational wealth for you and the people that come after you. 93 million Americans are still benefiting from that. So we have this narrative of pick yourself up by the bootstraps, but it's a hell of a lot easier if you're